Hi there! Welcome back. Today I'm taking a look at coal processing. This is kind of a part 2 to the Steelton video I did last time, because this is the facility that was originally all of my steel production. Unfortunately, these buildings aren't very polished. They're the first factories that I tried to make look and function like real buildings, but at this point I was still learning and trying to figure out how to put parts together in Satisfactory and make things work. So it's a little bit like with Quartz City. Today these buildings feel a little bit unfinished to me, and they're not quite the way that I would do them now. Still, I think there's some cool stuff in here, so let's take a look. I'll start here with the train station. The train station is done in international style. This is the first style that I thought I might be able to replicate in Satisfactory, and so it's the one that I started with. It's relatively straightforward, mostly glass and beams, with the simple geometric shapes that characterizes the work of one of the modernist architects like Richard Neutra or Mies van der Rohe. It's located up on the hill that overlooks the lower lying swampy area where most of the coal nodes are, so it sits up on a thicker concrete base. Originally, the interior of this space was used for storage and sorting for the train station platforms. All of the products manufactured in the main factory building come across the sky bridge and into the train station. As I started to move production out of that facility, the storage area became less and less important, so now it's mostly empty. I did consider converting it into a vehicle garage, but it's a bit of a tight fit, and I haven't figured out the best way to get vehicles in and out very easily, so that's not something I ever really developed. The main steel factory at Coal Processing is done in this early brutalist style. Brutalism is another style that, right off the bat, I thought it would work well in Satisfactory. I tried to incorporate some elements into this build that are emblematic of brutalism, beyond just the use of concrete. Things like exposed beams that hold up the roof, or some of the unique angles you find in the style, and the projecting and receding geometric forms. There are a few outbuildings here at Coal Processing as well. These buildings enclose the miners, and I had originally planned to enclose the train station on the hill that is part of the direct point-to-point transfer for coal, but I just never got around to it. These buildings aren't really as much in the same brutalist style. For the most part, I was just trying to get a quick enclosure up around the miners, and have it be vaguely in the same style so it looks like it matches. I think it works well enough, but I probably wouldn't build these buildings again in the same way today. And if I was going to come back to this facility and upgrade it, I might redo the way that these look. But they're perfectly functional for now. Finally, the last building is the Paleberry Island Coal Power Station. This one I designed to look like a 1930s Art Deco industrial building. Art Deco typically uses a lot of ornamentation and detail, and what you can do with that in Satisfactory is pretty limited. So this is more of a subdued version of Art Deco that you would more typically find on things like power stations. That said, I'm really happy with how it turned out. It's kind of a shame that it's tucked away in the back here behind all the other buildings, where you can't really see it from the road or the main train line. But if you come exploring back here, it's a cool thing to find. One thing I'm particularly proud of is this interior lobby space. When I built these 3 buildings at Coal Processing, in addition to building them in specific identifiable styles, I was also trying to make them function as real buildings. I might do a separate video on this sometime about what my design philosophy is in Satisfactory, but one of the things that I try to do is to make the factories make sense as real buildings. So there's generally a specific entrance area, proper signage and flow, and an overall layout that makes sense. And something else I like to include is office space and control rooms. Here's the plant manager office for the coal power station, and here's the one that's in the main coal processing factory. I've been creating little rooms like this in most of my factories. I haven't really been showing them off too much because some of them, like in Blue Palm Tech Park and Steelton, I never got around to decorating. But I think these extra non-functional spaces are a fun detail, and they add a bit of life to the building. Coal processing is also the first factory that I created a factory map for. I thought this was another fun way to add some life to the buildings. Using signs, you can stack them on top of each other and create these big displays that act as a guide to the layout of the factory. You can see here how the different functional areas are color-coded. But a lot of this has changed too, or it will change if I come back to this build and update it. This is also something I've done in a couple of other factories, but to be honest, these usually end up going out of date pretty quickly, or I don't end up finishing them because I spend my time on things that are a little more interesting, like making the buildings look cool. So I like it, I think it's a cool idea, but it's pretty low on my list of priorities of things that I do in my factory builds these days. Returning to the coal power station. Another neat aspect of this factory is that it's built out over this island in the bay here. Something I try to do with my builds is to construct them to be integrated with the landscape. I don't usually just plow straight over an area unless it's already flat or doesn't have a lot going on. But if there are some interesting features like a cliff or this island here, I like to try and build the building in such a way that it incorporates these things into the design. And this is a cool example of that. I tried to design the building to work around and over the island and keep it intact and accessible. In doing that here, I created this little internal dock area with these arches, and the building itself vaulting out over the island and into the bay. It also gives the building a bit of a nautical theme, which is also a staple of Art Deco design. While I'm here at the coal power station, I'll start here with production. The plant uses 16 coal generators in 4 banks of 4, with 1 overclocked water extractor for each bank. This was the first automated power that I had in this save, and I think that's pretty typical for people who start in the Rocky Desert. At this point, I probably don't really need these coal generators because I have plenty of power coming from other sources. Or I did anyway, before the 1.0 release removed a lot of the nodes I was using. I suppose if I was trying to update this save to 1.0, having these does come in handy because they're guaranteed power. As far as parts production goes, originally this main building was producing steel parts in addition to the steel ingots. At the moment it's only producing steel ingots, all of which get shipped to Steelton for steel parts production there. You can see that things are still backed up at this factory, but if you watched my Steelton video, I did start to figure that out a little bit. Coal processing also has a room dedicated to manufacturing explosives. These machines were never automated. There's a container down on the first floor that's a deposit point for sulfur. I used to just run sulfur over by hand and throw it in here every once in a while, anytime I was over in this area. And then these machines would manufacture black powder and noblisks in the background, and it would all get stored in containers under the train station. Eventually, as this save grew, I decided to automate everything in the game that could be automated, at least up until Update 8. Once I automated the explosives, I no longer needed to have these machines making those products, and so they're idle now. If there's one thing I think I could do better in this area, it would be to make all these nodes synergize better. At the moment, I'm not using the copper node for anything. Originally, I was using it to ship copper ingot to Crater Lakes for aluminum products. But once I started manufacturing more copper ingot at Blue Palm Tech Park, that facility is a lot closer and also had the capacity to make a lot more copper. So it made sense to move Crater Lake's copper import coming from the tech park. So now there's an entire copper node here that's not being put to use. Originally, when I set this factory up, I didn't realize that there was an alt that allows you to make more iron ingots out of an iron-copper alloy. Either that, or it might not have been in the game yet. I think it was, and maybe I just hadn't found it. Either way, I didn't know that was an option, and I didn't realize how much that can benefit manufacturing steel. What that all means is this building is kind of in an interesting spot. Because this building was originally being used for several different things, I left a lot of space open with the intention of maybe needing to expand other production into it later. I've got this open porch area on the 3rd floor, and this other large empty room over by the copper node that I was originally thinking about expanding copper production into. This could all be converted into iron or steel ingot production. So it would be an interesting challenge to try and retool this factory. I'd basically have to tear out the entire interior of the building and rebuild all of the machines from scratch. The way I do all of my builds is that I always build the machines and the layouts first, and then I fit the building and the design around the machines. Tearing all of this out would be a fun challenge because I'd get to work the other way around. I could always raise the roof too if I need more space, and there's room on the hill up where the iron node is, so there are some options here for expanding steel production and seeing how that all works out. I feel like coal processing has a lot of potential, but there's definitely room for improvement here. The factory isn't making good use of space or the resources that are available in this area. It basically needs to be completely torn out from the inside and rebuilt. I think the train station works fine, and the coal power plant is working well, so I probably wouldn't touch those. But there's definitely a lot that needs to be done here. Thanks for coming along on the tour.